Hey everyone, thank you. I'm Joel. I'm one of the readers at Epiphany. I think behind my back I'm called Grumpy the Reader, but tonight I'm in a good mood. This is the 13th of the Epiphany editions, as you'll see that we're celebrating tonight, and we brought in some of the best people who submitted. And as usual with a literary magazine, there's a huge amount of submissions. So when you get down to this group, they've really actually been read by me and everybody else, and mainly Odette and Tanya. But this is a fairly select group by the time you get to this level. You know, whenever you publish a literary journal, there's an element of the miraculous here, in the sense that, you know, we're on Manhattan, you know, probably the wealthiest 30 square miles in the world, and yet here we are all gathered happily working for like the minimum wage in Burundi to get this done. And I'm sort of proud of that. I mean, yes, some people say it's like being a birder on an artillery range, but in fact, it's quite cool that we all share this love of the written word so much that we'd get together despite the cacophony around us that has slightly different values, shall we say. Anyway, what I want to do first is tell you that we're going to have 3 readers, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to introduce Tanya Ray, who is our new fiction editor. This is her first issue, and a sign of her good work here. As usual, what I'd like you to do is turn off your cell phones. I'd also like you to like us on Facebook, or you'll sick SurveyMonkey or MailChimp after you. But we'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for 2 more readers. So that's pretty much it. Tanya?
Hi. So I'm really excited about tonight. This is my first time being the fiction editor of Epiphany, and it was sort of this magical process. Can everybody hear me? I'm sure, yeah. I would say about, as Joel said, you know, we have this whole team of diligent readers, and we all slog through the slush pile for months looking for stuff. And what I think is one of the many miracles of this issue is that about more than half of them were from that slush pile. And that's an exciting process in its own right, because it's like, you know, finding a diamond in the rough. And those stories are phenomenal. And then there were the solicited submissions, where I got to pick some of my favorite writers and reach out to them and see if they would send me their work. And that is a whole different kind of satisfaction, because I'm choosing them because I like their work and they sort of fit into my vision for the issue. And I think it makes for a really nice range of voices. And just today I was, you know, in preparation for this, I was flipping through the issue and I was like, there's some like really badass stuff in this issue. So I'm really excited, and I feel really lucky to have worked with all of these writers. And lucky that they're here to read with us, for us tonight. So Doug Watson, I came to know his work about a year ago when my friend Adina Talvi Goodman, who is the managing editor of One Story back there, and I asked her if she'd read anything good lately. And immediately her eyes lit up and she said, "Oh my God, Douglas Watson." And she told me about the current issue of One Story then, which was by Doug, and it was The Messenger Who Did Not Become a Hero. So of course I went home and opened it and started reading, and I was mesmerized from the first page. It's this really weird, ironic tale about a messenger who works for a king who's no good and has been proved as such by numerous studies. And the messenger was just this really fun voice to be taken along this journey with. And, you know, Coffee, I remember Coffee being the one true joy in his life. And he falls in love late in life, sort of spectacularly in the way that we all should. And I think, but what struck me the most, of course, was Doug's writing, because it was so playful and funny and sort of devastating, because it was like making light of these dark subjects. So of course I reached out to Doug and gushed profusely, and he sent me Pink Slip. I hope he's reading from it tonight. I don't know if he will be, but I don't want to give too much away because it is one of the shorter pieces, but I think it is also one of the most powerful pieces in the magazine. And I feel lucky to have snagged it and honored that we're the first of what I think are many stops on Doug's book tour for his new novel, which came out yesterday. Now I'll give you the straight bio here. So Doug Watson is the author of a book of stories, The Heir of Not Quite. His novel, A Moody Fellow Finds Love and Then Dies, was published yesterday by Outpost 19. And he has a lot of other publications. His story, Life on the Moon, was chosen by Dan Shawn in 2012 as one of the year's top 50 very short fictions. And he was featured as a literary debutante at One Story's debutante ball in 2013? Last year. And he lives in New York City, and of course he plays in a band. If you guys haven't picked up Doug's books, I think we have them here for sale. Do we?
Yeah, they're in this bag here.
Okay. Make sure you pay for them, don't just take them out of the bag. But hopefully you guys can grab a copy, because I'm sure you won't be sorry. And here's Doug Watson.
Thank you, Tanya. It was a deeply flattering introduction, and so on. Thanks very much to everyone at Epiphany for having me here tonight and for publishing my story in the first place. If I seem a little zoned out, it's because I've been copy editing all day, which is a fate I wouldn't wish on any of you or on myself. But anyway, yeah, so I have these two books for sale. The one came out yesterday. There's a red one and a blue one. So, you know, I'm working my way through all the colors. I'm not sure how many colors there are. That's a philosophical question, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to read my story, Pink Slip, which was in issue 13 of Epiphany. Am I close enough to the mic? I'm going in and out, aren't I? Because I'm swaying from fatigue, midlife fatigue. And it's a very short story, but I don't want to take too much time, so I thought I would read just the nouns. Is that cool? Let's see what happens. No, I'm not going to do that. A word about this story, how this story came about. It's, for me, it's a very meaningful story because it was sort of hard-earned, not so much in a literary sense, but in the sense of suffering through repeated layoffs at my workplace. And not suffering because I got laid off, but people I knew got laid off and so on. So I won't tell you the name of that workplace. It's a major print media company whose name may rhyme with Rhyme Inc. I don't know. Maybe, or maybe not. But in any case, so layoffs are depressing, and this story, therefore, is depressing. I apologize. It's called Pink Slip, which is not a reference to something a woman might wear, you know. I guess you could wear one. Start reading, Doug. Okay, Pink Slip. Dear employee, thank you for your quarter century of devoted service. You are no longer needed. Goodbye. But no, haha, of course we jest. That is not how these things are done. Dear employee, when in the course of human events, oh, that is not the way either. Let's see. Dear employee, difficult period, unfortunate necessity hurts us more than to right size or to capsize, that is the question. High waves these days, economic waves. The boat of our once proud industry meets the rogue wave of the future, etc. No life rafts available. Sorry, we outsourced the whole life raft thing last year. No doubt a life raft will appear at any moment on the eastern horizon from which hope, or at least light, springs eternal, But if not, just call this number. It's, let's see, the number is, Dear employee, give my love to Barbara, Jim, and your beautiful son, daughter, cat, whatever. We have internships, you know, inside track, don't hesitate. No pay at the outset, but it's a foot in the door or a paw. Children are the future. They grow up so fast, but not cats. Cats pretty much stay the same. I don't like cats. Never have. The dead eye of a killer, that's what I see when a cat looks at me. If this company were run by cats, hoo-wee. I lost my place. What a place to lose your place, right? Just when you trot out the falsetto. Hoo-wee. Then you'd be in a fix right now, employee. You would be toyed with, battered about, gripped in sharp teeth, shaken, set down, ignored. Then you dart your eyes, now, and you make a run for it, and wham, the cat has you again. Man, that hurt. It's life or death for you, most likely the latter, but for the cat, it's just a game. Cats make me sick, employee. Dear employee, do not pass go. Do not, although wouldn't that be something, collect $200. Do not even put your things in a box. There are no boxes anymore due to high waves of necessity. You don't really need your things anyway. It doesn't pay to be too materialistic, especially at your age. Your thoughts should be turning toward ultimate matters, the life that beats inside you like a heart, etc., etc. The stripping down to what is truly essential. Let it now begin. Oh, employee, what I would give to have the kind of time you're about to have to contemplate what is truly essential. But some of us must work and work. It is our fate. I do not begrudge you your good fortune, employee. Dear employee, how is little Gretchen? Have the doctors made any headway? Or am I mixing up whose daughter? Ah, well, it'll be easier to keep track of who's who around here from now on, won't it? There's a number to call about insurance if Gretchen's yours. Or if she isn't. Everyone needs insurance, even people like you who don't have a job. Or at any rate, that seems to be the spirit of the day. Take, take, take. Haha. Let's see, the number is... Don't cry, employee. The door is over there. You know what to do. First day of the rest of your life, employee. Also, the last day of your 25 years of devoted service, for which we can never and won't thank you enough. Today is one of those hinge days, or pivot days. I forget what the poet calls them. The day that is different. One of these days is not like the others. Can you spot it? Why, it's today, employee. Former employee. Dear former employee, why are you still here? Thanks.
That was great. Thanks, Doug. Next up is Miranda McLeod, who is a friend of mine from grad school. And I remember meeting Miranda for the first time in a fiction workshop at NYU. I just started there and she was a second year in the program. And she was working on a collection of link stories about a cast of characters whose lives centered around a funeral home. And her writing was really morbid and smart. And even now, I mean, it's been a couple of years, and I can still remember all the details about the funeral director's hair shining and the contradictory LA light. And her writing is always smart and morbid, even, you know, all these years later. And what's really great about Miranda's writing and really consistent is her commanding rhythm. And there's always this very real depth of human experience there. And in her story that's in the magazine, Trespasser Incident, we see Cheryl, a woman on a train, very simply, the way she sees herself. And very quickly, what seems like an innocuous event on this train is seamlessly woven into her recent past. And we soon see the many complicated layers that make up her character. It's a really bold narrative move to give us a story while our hero is literally stalled at a crossroads. And I think it's something a lesser writer would probably not have been able to pull off. But it works here because Miranda's command of the language and tone draws us in, transforming our narrator and this moment into something quite unforgettable. Miranda's fiction has appeared in Willow Springs, The Sunday Times, Confrontation, the Bridport Anthology, Evolver, and elsewhere. She won the Bridport Flash Fiction Prize and was shortlisted for the Glimmer Train and Tan Foundation Fiction Awards. She is a fellow of the Kimbilio Center for African American Fiction, the Perot Collective, and the Hurston Wright Foundation. Miranda studied creative writing at Columbia University, earned an MFA in fiction at New York University, and is currently earning her PhD in literature at Rutgers University. She teaches creative writing at the Bryant Park Word for Word series. Miranda McLeod.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. All right, okay, get it together. Thank you, Tanya, Joel, Odette, and the Center for Fiction People for having us, for selecting my story, having us here tonight. So I'm going to read from the Trespasser Incident. I'm going to start a bit in the middle, but you haven't missed much. Cheryl is a woman on a train. She is a widow. The train is stalled because of a trespasser incident, and in this case, it's a suicide. Someone has jumped in front of the train and stalled it on the tracks. And so while she's sitting there waiting for the train to start moving again, she sort of thinks of her own sort of trespasser incident. And that's when she was at home alone, sleeping in the middle of the night, and a noise sort of awoke her. So she wakes up, turns on the light, and then that's where we're about to begin. Okay. Oh, and then the last thing I will just say is that I'm just going to read from this sort of flashback section, and then at the very end we will sort of move back into the train in the present moment. So just to orient you. Okay, light floods the room, and with it sound. Whatever has been creaking her floorboards in the hall starts up a tremendous racket, and as Cheryl fumbles for her glasses and flings back the sheets and rushes toward her door, her first thought is that it must be some sort of animal in her hall, a goat or a small horse, which, frightened by the sudden light, is now bucking and kicking gashes in her wallpaper. But of course not. What sounded to her like hooves is really just the pounding and scuffling of boots worn by men, 2 of them, startled. Cheryl meets them in the living room. At the flash of light, they ran, but Cheryl is close behind, her glasses finally on, relief and fear now colored by a strange sort of bravado, which had first allowed her to imagine these men as a furious and troublesome goat, had allowed her to charge after them, but is now fading as she reaches the living room, and all 3 see in the ambient light from the picture window what it is they really are. 2 men in boots and black clothing, and a middle-aged lady in bare feet and a nightgown, standing together in the dark living room. Cheryl is finally afraid. All bravado, all relief is gone. She crosses her arms under her breasts, which are loose and hanging. She wishes she had a robe on, a real one, and a bra. She is aware of her unprotected feet with their yellowed nails, and her hair, which needs washing and is gathered in a loose, messy braid. The men, too, seem to feel the shift. One of them, the silent one, strides toward her, and a cry fills her throat like a soft-shelled egg. But she stays quiet. Something about the man's face, the firm set of his mouth, the creases that run like scars down his cheeks, tells her that it is best to stay quiet. He grasps her arm above the elbow and spins her around to face the wall. His grip is hard, and she can feel the individual pressure of each of his 5 fingers. She hears his talkative partner leave the room and go into the kitchen. She hears him jerk open her utensil drawers and slam them shut again. His movements are angry, forceful, and she is reminded of Jim, the way he would slam about when looking for a screwdriver or getting a glass of water when he wanted to tell her he was mad about something without actually telling her. Has she made this man, this trespasser, mad? Probably. They'd probably assumed her dark house was empty. They probably did not expect to be chased like goats down the hall. She hears the man leave the kitchen and walk back toward her. Of course, he is coming to kill her. Of course, he has taken a knife from her kitchen and will now slice her throat. Here, in the corner of her living room. She stares at her wallpaper. It has a pattern of dark green leaves on a cream background. Jim had disliked it, but she'd insisted, seeing in it something stately and faintly British, something her mother would have liked. Once it was up, though, covering the long 4 walls of the living room and wrapping around into the dining room and the hall, she could see what Jim meant. It was a lot of leaves spread as they were over such a big space. A lot of dark green for a house with large windows with blonde wooden floors. She had always meant to change it. Now, with the angry trespasser bearing down on her, she never will. She will die here, in the corner of her living room. She is afraid, but fear is not the pressing thing. Fear has been subsumed by a total, encompassing certainty. She will die here, in the corner of her living room. And what does fear, or bravado, or vocabulary have to do with that? She holds one of the dark green leaves tightly in her gaze, narrowing her eyes to cup it. It is heart-shaped, veined with a tendril curling off into the cream. It is slightly smaller than her palm. It is one leaf out of many leaves, too many leaves. There is something British about it. The talkative man steps behind her. She can feel his body close, a few inches away. He raises his arms, of course, the knife. It is now that she will die in the corner of her living room. But no. He raises his arms, and the pressure is not at her throat, but at her eyes. It's a dish towel being tied roughly around her face. She can tell from the weave and from the slight, moldy chemical smell that it is one of her old dish towels, a stained and torn one she now uses to clean the floorboards and the oven and sometimes the bathroom. Once it is secure, the silent man jerks her about and pulls her away from the corner, where she did not die. He leads her to the sofa. She trips on the area rug and, taking offense at her resistance, at her weight dragging against him, he jerks harder. She is thrown onto the sofa. She lays there unmoving. In her fall, her nightgown has tangled around her waist. She is lying on one hip, facing the back of the sofa. She is aware of her butt in its wide pink underwear, unveiled, facing the men. The room is silent. Her heart beats quickly, and with each pulse, it's as if the egg in her throat pulses too, throbbing in its soft shell. She sees herself as they do, blindfolded, facing the back of the sofa, her nightgown pulled up, her wide pink butt, vulnerable. She knows they are all thinking the same thing. Are they the type to rape an old lady? Is she the type of old lady who gets raped? There is a jolt, a shudder, and then the train begins to move. She wonders if that means if it's over, if the trespasser has been cleaned up, if the families have been notified. But the train doesn't pick up speed, it inches along, and the landscape moves slowly, and as the landscape moves slowly past, she begins to see evidence of the accident. First, a police car, sitting still, empty, alongside the tracks. Then an unmarked black SUV, passenger side door open, and then the meat in a flood, a medical examiner's truck, a car stamped crime lab along its door, 2 of them, then 3, another cop car, but this one with its lights silently, uselessly flashing. Cops, too, and men dressed not like cops, but in official garb, windbreakers and shining shoes, and railway workers in neon vests and hard hats. No paramedics, though. No ambulances. It is all very calm and orderly. Cheryl feels a dull, protective sort of anger at all the order outside her window. There are no tears or rushing about, and there should be. Someone's job at these sorts of crime scenes should be emotional expression. A person should be positioned up the bank, a safe distance away, so that they may scream and rush about without endangering any evidence. This should be an official job, not the task of a grieved widow arriving on the scene, flustering the transit workers who are not trained to deal with family members, who drag her really, to a trailer by the side of the tracks and force a cup of tepid water into her hands and ask her over and over, how did you get here? Who notified you? While she clutches the cup of water in one hand and an iPhone in the other with great ropes of snot stretching down her face. No, an official position, filled by a professional. She has heard that there are places in the Middle East where you can hire mourners for a funeral. Women, professionals, who, for a fee, will do that wonderfully chilling ululation over and over again at the top of their lungs, because even a trespasser deserves some expression of emotion. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Sara Batkie is next. So Sara is a writer who never seems to not be working. She's always got a new story, and it's never anything like the one before it. And just a few years out of grad school, she's already finished a novel. When I found this out, I started bombarding her with questions about the novel. And she told me she'd managed to complete the book by working on it every weekend for a year. As someone who's been struggling to finish a novel for years, this was incredibly astounding and inspiring for me to hear. And what's maybe even more surprising is that I'm pretty sure it's good. And this story that we published in Epiphany, Those Who Left and Those Who Stayed, Sara submitted, and I think the first thing that struck me about the story was the way she very quickly constructed a whole world in a very tight space. From the opening, we're literally pulled apart from our familiar environment into a different realm on a frozen ice floe. And we welcome it because we're simultaneously introduced to a cast of characters that are really deftly drawn by Sara with pinpoint precision. There's Lloyd, who longs to be reunited with his young fiancée back on the mainland and punishes himself for fantasizing about other women. And Alicia, who spends her days working in the cannery, wearing the prints off her fingertips and her nights knitting sleeves that never evolve into sweaters. And then there's her sweet, curious son, Jude, who nearly makes it impossible for them to escape. And this is among other things that happen in a very short span of time, and together they work sort of seamlessly to reveal the stark realities of humanity with a very real honesty. Sara was born in Seattle, has lived in Connecticut and Iowa, and currently resides in Brooklyn. She is a 2010 graduate of New York University's Master's in Fiction Writing program. Her stories have been published in Gulf Coast and Lit Magazine and received mention in the 2011 edition of Best American Short Stories. She recently completed work on her first novel. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you, Tanya, for that wonderful introduction. I'm glad it seems like I'm constantly working. It's all illusion, but we'll keep that between us. Thank you to Epiphany for taking this story on and for having this event tonight, and all of you for coming. It's very exciting. So for those of you who don't know, usually when I'm here at the center, it's because I'm working as the awards and programs manager. But I must say the view from this side of the microphone is not too shabby. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the story that's in the magazine. The night the ground beneath Sherwood, Alaska split in two, the only witness to the tragedy was Kirby, the village drunk. It was mid-December, the kind of cold that cracks cloth. In summer, the earth was damp and suckled at the townspeople's toes as they walked over it. But by winter, it was brittle, temperamental, sharp as elbows. Everyone else was buried deep in their beds. As the floe broke loose and began to float away, carrying 9 of them with it, Kirby slumped against a lamppost and watched the shoreline recede slowly into the darkness. No one, as usual, heard his hiccups. They lost the lights first. Then the rest of the electricity followed. 3 days in, they were storing perishable food outdoors. Kirby downed the remainder of his alcohol, stepped off the ice and into the sea. 2 more tried to swim back to shore. Another vanished, trying to find the other side of the floe in a storm. The 5 who remained moved on to the canned and dry goods. The youngest was 7, the oldest 83, and the rest somewhere in between. Before they'd been neighbors, they weren't certain what they were now. With no reception and all lines cut, most of them lost hope of getting in touch with the loved ones they'd left behind. But they held on to wild possibilities of passing a steamer ship or getting picked up by a helicopter traveling overhead. Maybe a whale would swallow them whole, turn them into a colony of Jonahs, or they'd plow right into another piece of land. Eventually, the hope of being rescued or perishing in such ways dwindled too. Alicia was running out of food to feed her son. One morning it was 6 dry flakes of cereal in a milkless bowl. Would the next be sawdust, milk from her own breast? If there were any animals, she'd hunt for them. But out here, each crunch across the ice could echo for miles. A single step made seismic. It seemed they were alone. Her son was not a good eater, and in the past few weeks, Alicia had been making a game of their meals, splitting up his food into real estate. Plots of peas, mashed potato complexes, but there was not enough here to make a single home. She'd already stopped eating just about anything herself. "It's not good to skip breakfast," he told her once. "I'm not hungry," she lied. Jude reached across the table for her bowl, tipped his sideways, and parceled 3 flakes from one to the other. Then he pushed it back without a word. They ate them one at a time, letting the cereal melt into soggy cardboard on their tongues. She tried to maintain some sort of normalcy with Jude, sending him off during the day to spend time with Miss Kimball, the school teacher. She wished him to continue learning, even if it were things he wouldn't be able to use. Her husband, Espen, had never put much stock in education. He dropped out of high school when his father died to take his place in the family whaling business. They married not long after Alicia graduated. In Sherwood, there were 2 strains of romantic desperation, that of the young to find someone, and that of the old who didn't. Divorce was rare, but a match made wisely was rarer. Espen was not a bad husband when he was there to be one, but his work often kept him from home, and Alicia was unprepared for the loneliness that would come to blight her love. She spent her days working in the cannery, wearing the prints off her fingertips, and her nights knitting sleeves that never evolved into sweaters. When she slept, she fantasized about the other men in the factory, pasting mermaid-shaped labels onto her skin. When she laughed, the mermaids shimmied like tattoos. Espen would crash through the door unannounced, the shock of salt in his beard, offering a vial of ambergris or an Inuit soapstone sculpture, and Alicia would feel the surface of her heart split like a cold lake. She tore at the layers of his clothes as if she hardly believed the body underneath. When she had their child, she didn't know where to wire the news. Now they were both at sea, though she suspected he wasn't trying to reach her. With so much more ocean to sail, he had no reason. Drifting apart, what an inadequate way to describe people deciding to leave one another. As if all it took was going limp. And every night Alicia sat down at the table with Jude and neglected again to tell him. After so many days working in the factory, she had longed for such closeness with her child, and now she didn't know what to do with it. On the morning she and Jude split their flimsy breakfast, Alicia resolved to do better. She gathered herself into her warmest coat, went to the closet where her husband stored his things, and dug out his fishing line and tackle box. She hadn't been angling since she was a child, but the howling of her stomach thwarted the demurrals of her head. Alicia hadn't been outside in weeks. Looking out over their limited land, the houses that were left seemed to huddle together against the wind. She wasn't certain how long she walked until she reached the flow's edge, but it didn't seem enough. The ice simply dropped into the sea like someone turning a corner. Today the waves were calm, a sort of dirty dish gray, but she could recall the nights when the water sounded like it was preparing to knock on her door, vampirically awaiting an invite inside. She must have sat there for hours, drawing the line through the water, casting and reeling nothing back. The lure bobbed about the surface like a child at play. She remembered the catches her father would return with, heaps of fish, the scales shining like treasure. Her mother would fry them in a pan with butter. They would freeze the rest until winter and roast them over the fire along with chestnuts. But this sea betrayed no life roiling beneath it. She was right, they were alone. That night she dreamed again of the sea, the waves seething, parting, unhinging like a jaw, leaping up to swallow them whole. She woke in a flood of sweat. In the morning, she took something else from her husband's closet, a rope, which she instructed Jude to tie around his waist and attach to the front doorknob before he went outside, an old trick farmers used on their cattle in storms. She would not lose another man to these waters, not yet. Thank you.
So he does this for about a month, and I call a guy up and I say, so what's going on? What happens in like an anger management thing? And he says, well, it's like AA. The first day you have to come in and say how you got there. But he said the amazing thing was that everybody starts with the exact same line. They all start, and they have the same tone of slight bewilderment. So the question is, what is the line? Anybody want to take a crack at it? I called customer service. True story. We're gonna do an epiphany. Just every story has to start with that. It's my pleasure to introduce Jason. I just heard a great thing about Jason's chapbook, which we're going to tell you right away. Last year he released a chapbook titled "Fuck You" and dedicated to his grandparents. Huh? Okay, Jason, now the official introduction. Jason Katzenstein writes and draws mostly in his pajamas from his apartment in Bushwick. You can find his comics in Mad Magazine, The Toast, Funny or Die, and at jasonkatzensteintumblr.com. Jason, the floor.
Thanks so much, Joel. Thank you. Thanks so much, Odette and Tanya and Linda and everyone. It's an honor to be included in this issue of Epiphany among such impressive writers. God, I hope the projector works. This piece is a comic, so there's a visual component. If you can't see it, I'm so sorry, but you can close your eyes and picture cartoons. The piece was conceived of and written and drawn over the summer, my last summer in Los Angeles before I moved here, and stars a character who looks a lot like me. And I think that what we're gonna do is, let's see if this works, do a little magic here. If I go like this, can you all see that? Okay, so that's what I'm gonna, because I can see it better too. I have to read it. It's on my screen. It's over there. So let's give this a shot. The piece is called Night Drive. Oh, and one thing that I'll do also is, because I want you to see the composition of the pages as a whole, is we will zoom out. And then I'll zoom in, and it might get a little disjointed, but so is the medium of comics itself. So let's go. Night Drive. They should pull people over for driving while introspective. There's no way I'm fit to be on the road when I get in this mood. I can't even listen to music. Not when music is meant to take the place of an obsessive internal monologue. I love music too much to use it as a soundtrack. It gets foggy like this at 2 a.m., and I imagine that I'm living inside of a snow globe, or some abandoned theater set. When it gets bad, I think about David Foster Wallace's short story, Good Old Neon, where the already dead narrator says, "One clue that there's something not quite real about sequential time, the way you experience it, is the various paradoxes of time supposedly passing, and of a so-called present that's always unrolling into the future and creating more and more past behind it, as if the present were this car. Nice car, by the way. And the past is the road we've just gone over, and the future is the headlit road up ahead we haven't yet gotten to. And time is the car's forward movement, and the precise present is the car's front bumper as it cuts through the fog of the future, so that it's now and then a tiny bit later, a whole different now, etc. Except if time is really passing, how fast does it go? At what rate does the present change? See? Meaning, if we use time to measure motion, or rate, which we do, it's the only way you can. 95 miles per hour, 70 heartbeats a minute, etc. How are you supposed to measure the rate at which time moves? 1 second per second? It makes no sense. You can't even talk about time flowing or moving without hitting up against paradox right away. So think for a second. What if there's really no movement at all? What if this is all unfolding in the one flash you call the present? This first infinitely tiny split second of impact when the speeding car's front bumper is just starting to touch the abutment, just before the bumper crumples and displaces the front end, and you go violently forward, and the steering column comes back at your chest as if shot out of something enormous. Meaning that what if in fact this now is infinite and never really passes in the way your mind is supposedly wired to understand pass, so that not only your whole life, but every single humanly conceivable way to describe and account for that life has time to flush like neon shaped into those connected cursive letters that business science and Windows love so much to use through your mind all at once in the literally immeasurable instant between impact and death, just as you start forward to meet the wheel at a rate no belt ever made could restrain. The end. Yeah. The end of that story, because the narrator kills himself in a car crash. What if there is no movement? What if it's all like comics panels, a series of completely still images juxtaposed next to each other that we trick ourselves into seeing as contiguous? And at that point, what's to stop you from making the same argument about meaning, that it's a necessary and retroactive imposition upon the dispassionate machinations of an indifferent universe? Fuck. I need to park. There's this Presbyterian church on Mulholland that has a parking lot that's only ever used on Sundays. On nights when I want to feel lonelier, I go there and look out at the city, and it's hard to tell where the lights end and the stars begin. Like at the end of a movie, when the camera zooms out until the hero becomes indistinguishable from everybody else walking down the street. Or the last paragraph of The Dead. Yes, the newspapers were right. Snow was general all over Ireland. It was falling softly upon the bog of Allen, and further westward, softly falling into the dark mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling too upon every part of the lonely churchyard where Michael Fury lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate, on the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end, upon all the living and the dead. Except snow is never general all over Los Angeles. Thank you.
Okay, and now for our last reader. We're really fortunate to get Elena Ferrante's latest work for Epiphany. And the thing about Ferrante's work is that, I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's the kind of thing where when your friends recommend it, there's a kind of kicker that goes with it, like, listen, read the book or I'm giving up on you. You know, like, pay attention. This is important. Ann Goldstein is an editor at The New Yorker. She has translated works by, among others, Pier Paolo Pasolini, Alessandro Baricco, Romano Bellincini, oh man, am I murdering these, and I'm so sorry, and Elena Ferrante, including My Brilliant Friend and The Story of a New Name, the first 2 volumes of Ferrante's Neapolitan trilogy. She's currently editing the complete works of Primo Levi in English and has been the recipient of a Pen Renato Paglioli Translation Award and a Guggenheim Fellow. Sorry, Anne.
Thank you. I'm going to read from the beginning of the novel from which the excerpt is taken. The excerpt that's in Epiphany, excuse me. And then at the end of this, I'm reading the first chapter. This is to get you excited about the novel. Perhaps you'll want to buy it. And then I'm going to read the last paragraph in Italian, just so you get the idea. Okay. In the spring of 1966, Lila, I should say the story, this is the second volume of what's going to be a 4-volume book about the friendship between 2 women in Naples in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and I guess eventually up to the present. In the spring of 1966, Lila, in a state of great agitation, entrusted to me a metal box that contained 8 notebooks. She said that she could no longer keep them at home. She was afraid her husband might read them. I carried off the box without comment, apart from some ironic allusions to the excessive amount of string she had tied around it. At that time, our relationship was terrible, but it seemed that only I considered it that way. The rare times we saw each other, she showed no embarrassment, only affection. A hostile word never slipped out. When she asked me to swear that I wouldn't open the box for any reason, I swore. But as soon as I was on the train, I untied the string, took out the notebooks, and began to read. It wasn't a diary, although there were detailed accounts of the events of her life, starting with the end of elementary school. Rather, it seemed evidence of a stubborn self-discipline in writing. The pages were full of descriptions: the branch of a tree, the ponds, a stone, a leaf with its white veinings, the pots in the kitchen, the various parts of a coffee maker, the brazier, the coal and bits of coal, a highly detailed map of the courtyard, the stradone, the rusting iron framework beyond the ponds, the gardens and the church, the cut of the vegetation alongside the railway, the new buildings, her parents' house, the tools her father and her brother used to repair shoes, their gestures when they worked, and above all, colors. The colors of every object at different times of the day. But there were not only pages of description. Isolated words appeared in dialect and in Italian, sometimes circled without comment. And Latin and Greek translation exercises, and entire passages in English on the neighborhood shops and their wares, on the cart loaded with fruit and vegetables that Enzo Scano took through the streets every day, leading the mule by the halter, and many observations on the books she read, the films she saw in the church hall, and many of the ideas that she had asserted in the discussions with Pasquale, in the talks she and I used to have. Of course, the progress was sporadic, but whatever Lila captured in writing assumed importance, so that even in the pages written when she was 11 or 12, there was not a single line that sounded childish. Usually the sentences were extremely precise, the punctuation meticulous, the handwriting elegant, just as Maestro Oliviero had taught us. But at times, as if a drug had flooded her veins, Lila seemed unable to bear the order she had imposed on herself. Everything then became breathless. The sentences took on an overexcited rhythm. The punctuation disappeared. In general, it didn't take long for her to return to a clear, easy pace. But it might also happen that she broke off abruptly and filled the rest of the page with little drawings of twisted trees, humped smoking mountains, grim faces. I was entranced by both the order and the disorder, and the more I read, the more deceived I felt. How much practice there was behind the letter she had sent me on Ischia years earlier. That was why it was so well written. I put everything back in the box, promising myself not to become inquisitive again. But I soon gave in. The notebooks exuded the force of seduction that Lila had given off since she was a child. She had treated the neighborhood, her family, the Solares, Stefano, every person or thing with ruthless accuracy. And what to say of the liberty she had taken with me, with what I said, with what I thought, with the people I loved, with my very physical appearance. She had fixed moments that were decisive for her without worrying about anything or anyone. Here vividly was the pleasure she had felt when at 10 she wrote her story, The Blue Fairy. Here, just as vivid, was what she had suffered when our teacher, Maestra Oliviero, hadn't deigned to say a single word about that story, in fact, had ignored it. Here was the suffering and the fury because I had gone to middle school, neglecting her, abandoning her. Here the excitement with which she had learned to repair shoes, the desire to prove herself that had induced her to design new shoes, and the pleasure of completing the first pair with her brother Reno. Here the pain when Fernando, her father, had said that the shoes weren't well made. There was everything in those pages, but especially hatred for the Solara brothers, the fierce determination with which she had rejected the love of the older Marcello, and the moment when she had decided instead to marry the gentle Stefano Carracci, the grocer, who out of love had wanted to buy the first pair of shoes she had made, vowing that he would keep them forever. Ah, the wonderful moment when at 15 she had felt herself a rich and elegant lady on the arm of her fiancé, who, all because he loved her, had invested a lot of money in her father and brother's shoe business, Cerullo Shoes. And how much satisfaction she had felt. The shoes of her imagination in large part realized, a house in the new neighborhood, marriage at 16. And what a lavish wedding, how happy she was. Then Marcello Solara, with his brother Michele, had appeared in the middle of the festivities, wearing on his feet the very shoes that her husband had said were so dear to him. Her husband, what sort of man had she married? Now, when it was all over, would the false face be torn off, revealing the horribly true one underneath? Questions and the facts without embellishment of our poverty. I devoted myself to those pages for days, for weeks. I studied them. I ended up learning by heart the passages I liked, the ones that thrilled me, the ones that hypnotized me, the ones that humiliated me. Beyond their naturalness, there was surely some artifice, but I couldn't discover what it was. Finally, one evening in November, exasperated, I went out carrying the box. I couldn't stand feeling Lila on me and in me, even now that I was esteemed myself, even now that I had a life outside of Naples. I stopped on the Solferino Bridge to look at the lights filtered through a cold mist. I placed the box on the parapet and pushed it slowly, a little at a time, until it fell into the river, as if it were her, Lila in person, plummeting, with her thoughts, words, the malice with which she struck back at anyone, the way she appropriated me, as she did every person or thing or event or thought that touched her. Books and shoes, sweetness and violence, the marriage and the wedding night, the return to the neighborhood in the new role of Signora Raffaella Carracci. Now I'm going to read that last paragraph in Italian. Excuse my pronunciation. Infine, una sera di novembre, esasperata, uscì portandomi dietro la scatola. Non ce la facevo più a sentirmi Lila addosso e dentro, anche ora che ero molto stimata, anche ora che avevo una vita fuori di Napoli. Mi fermai su Ponte Solferino a guardare le luci filtrate da una nebbiolina gelida. Poggiai la scatola sul parapetto, la spinsi piano, poco per volta, finché non cade nel fiume quasi che fosse lei, Lila in persona, a precipitare, coi suoi pensieri, le parole, la cattiveria con cui restituiva a chiunque colpo su colpo il suo modo di appropriarsi di me come faceva con ogni persona o cosa o evento o sapere che la sfiorasse. I libri e le scarpe, la dolcezza e la violenza, il matrimonio e la prima notte di nozze, il ritorno al rione nel ruolo nuovo di Signora Raffaella Carracci. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming out. I want to thank our readers, Douglas and Jason, Sarah, Miranda, and Ann for coming out tonight, and all of you for coming. Just a couple of people that should be mentioned for their extraordinary efforts. Willard Cook, who was our publisher, Odette Heidman, who was the editor-in-chief, Tanya, who did fiction, Cullen Thomas, who did nonfiction. This is the part of the rolling credits. You can all get up and go. I'll just be here reading. Adrian Brock, who was our interviews editor. Is Adrian here tonight? Hi, Adrian. I thought I recognized you. Okay, great. Fiction readers were Alexander Brokaw, Stratton Kaufman, Zachary Fishman, Belinda Klein, Ethan Plow, Daria Scheiferstein, Ed Jenkins, John Swispis, oh man, Colin McFoy, Anna Angeldakis, John Denny, and Carrie Shepard were the nonfiction readers. Those are just part of the people that contributed to getting this together. They owe our thanks, and also to you guys for showing up and not staying at home and watching Honey Boo Boo or something. Thanks again. Good night.